Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another recap review of the hit MGM Plus series, Godfather of Harlem. It's your guy Lucas with my guy Nate here. What is going on this evening, sir?
Doing good, my guy. How you feeling?
Hey, look, as we do the best time jump I've ever seen humanly possible in this episode,
Man.
because I don't know what space crew they got to do this building in 3 months, but I got questions.
Yeah. Can we just get right
And
into that really quick?
oh yeah, we're
I
jumping directly into it.
I gotta be honest. I thought it was a dream state. I did not think at all. I was just like, oh, look at this. Look at him thinking about the head and his future ahead and the possibilities if they can align. And I thought this was like a good scenario of like,
Yeah.
this is what the future could be like if they could get on the same page. The other thing I want to say is I'm not even going to waste no time and say it is we all know how important the character of the mink coat is. The fact that they just threw it in there already was kind of like, that was another big indication that this was a time jump to me.
But that's a weirder indication because that coat for Frank happens so much later on in life.
I know.
Why would he do it again if he saw the reaction from him doing it the first? I have so many questions about just the way they set that up.
Exactly. And like, it's interesting if that's what they want to portray with Frank, is that he was naive since the beginning, because when he stepped into the club, he had eyes on him that said, oh, he must be pushing for somebody. Yep. And for him to have had those type of eyes so early in the game meant you probably would have been a little more hip down the line to not make that mistake again, to draw more attention. So I do love that Godfather of Harlem does take their own creative freedoms and tell their sort of own story. And I know we're going to be obviously paying close attention to the tie-ins to American Gangster and other stories that we may know in terms of with Frank Lucas. But this one, I mean, this is the hardest left turn a story has taken for me that honestly changes what they call it. They call it retconning. Like you bring in the mink coat in so early, now you really start to think about this character in a whole different light. So but all means continue. I just knew that threw me off right off the break, like, oh wow. And then Fat Joe appeared.
Look at the Minko threw me off, but it was the point that we said 3 months later and the St. Clair Club is fully open and functional.
Yeah.
And I'm no scientist or engineer, but I'm just going to assume in that time period, it took a lot longer than that to build a building. So it just threw me off with them doing that type of time jump. But in the midst of this time jump, as you brought up, we do get to see Frank with the coat on with his girl as they arrive to the club. Then we just get to see the acts, the people who we're accustomed to see around the club.
Yeah.
We get to see Joe Colombo around the club, and we get to see his reaction to Frank wearing that coat, which was highly important as you progress through this episode. But the big part of this was Mayme, as she gets the official invite to the art club with $100K buy-in. So I'm just going to ask you, as we already spoke about the beginning of the club with Frank, before we get to what happens later on with everything that happens with Frank and Monique. What did you think about this introduction that she gets to this club and they immediately ask her in this time period for $100,000 to be part of this club?
I mean, they know her ties, they know her reach, and I mean, how much more exploitation are they going to have with her at this rate? And then honestly, every single time they get ready to fix their lips to suggest a compliment, I'm like, oh, here comes something racist. And here you go again, them figuring out a way to use her almost for clout, if I even must say, because when they was like, oh, I love your elaborate knowledge of, I was like, oh, they're gonna say the hood or the ghetto or narcotics, just anything. Art. And it was like the fact that they choked up the word to say art felt like that was the best possible outcome here for them. But
yeah,
honestly, just to kind of speak about the whole episode, it was kind of a sad episode for Mayme, man, because
yeah.
like we usually see this happen to Bumpy, where he gets in these sort of predicaments between, you know, wants and needs and being able to have to always jump over obstacles to get to those things, and it's never an easy day for all the stuff he tries to accomplish. And for her, she's always been the one to support him through it. But just to kind of see it flip the other way is just kind of was, I don't know, for me it was just kind of difficult because it was, you hate to see it for her. But it was but to say all that to say it was truly a beautiful arc for this episode, for her to really, you know, put her foot down and stand up for herself and make the best decision that's best for her, and not just trying to, I don't want to say she's trying to fit in with them, because she knows she's like deserving and qualified, but you know, sometimes grass ain't greener on the other side. And I think it was just interesting to see how that played out for her. But yeah, 100K is just silly. And that time, like, what is this?
I think that's what makes it so interesting. The conversation she has with Margaret at the little Harlem art studio.
Yeah.
And when Margaret asks her, like, well, why does black art have to be shared? Like, it's for us and it's made by us. Shouldn't that be enough? And you get Mayme give her this a very elaborate answer, almost to say it being with us isn't enough.
Yeah.
Because we deserve to have more eyes on it. It's like she's fighting a fight for something, but in a way she's neglecting just how important that still is for that art to remain black art. It brings it back to what happened with her and James when she told him to be nice during his speech, and then he gave a reading that she was surprised everyone loved because how visceral it was for him to do. And I think this is kind of that same equivalent in this conversation with her and Margaret, just because this is your daughter telling you, like, I think this should be enough for us. Like, this is fine. We can leave it for black people and it be perfectly fine. And Mayme feels the need to push for bigger and greater. And I think that's where the comparison between her and Bumpy fits the most here. Is now we're seeing those character, not flaws, but characteristics that possibly align her and Bumpy way more with one another than we are accustomed to seeing in the past seasons. Is that she does have ambition. She does want to do all these things. Even her telling Margaret, like, I want you to get to a point where you don't have to depend on a man for anything. Do everything on your own. And then we got to see this episode when she attempted to do everything on her own, and every roadblock was still thrown up in her face.
Yeah.
And this was her realization, like, oh, you all don't want me in here no matter what.
Yeah.
Like, and that was a hard realization for her. And by the end of the episode, we see her break down because of it. I think that was a great arc, this whole episode for Mayme. But going back to the beginning, the other important part of the club, as we get Frank and Bumpy talking, and immediately Bumpy notices the coat, and Frank is bragging about it being a chinchilla, and Bumpy asks him, do you know what a chinchilla is? And Frank does, and Bumpy says, it's a rodent. Almost diminishing the point that you have on something that flashy, because you think that's what other people want to see you in. And down to also telling him, no dope in my club.
Yeah.
Already lining up to Frank exactly what needs to happen. And then as we get Frank and Monique leaving the club, and as you said, Fat Joe appears out of nowhere. And if this is going to be the only scene we see Fat Joe in, I have questions. This could have been any other bit actor, but you put Fat Joe in scene.
Yeah, that's a Swish Beats favor here.
Exactly.
You know, guy got it. He wanted. Let me, man, put me on your show,
get
man.
Joe in here just on one time. One time, get Joe in here.
Yeah.
And as Monique is in the car, Frank turns around, and then the car explodes. Just when the car exploded, did you really think it was because of the coat and the attention he was getting, or did you think it was something else?
I have no clue. I really did not know. I was like, well, what would be? First of all, regardless how you look at it, you targeting him or not, that's still in front of Bumpy's club. And
Yeah,
you
and that's
understand
the
the
key
type
part.
of attention is going to bring and what type of business could potentially be lost because of it. First of all, you know, for what it's worth, with the visual effects and CGI done, I thought they definitely made that shot really cool.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Heighten the situation and whatnot. But yeah, this thing, I was like, what did Frank do to warrant that, and who did it? And I started to kind of do process of elimination. Obviously, it's not Bumpy. Obviously, it's not Joe because he's in there. The only person that leaves is, would Stella go that far? Is she, you know, has
She's the
she
princess of
rose to that level of you know, tyranny right now? Like, I don't know, but yeah, it definitely was a lot of questions in terms of like who has a target on Joe, on Frank right
Frank.
now.
Yeah.
And you know, we'll see how it plays out. I don't think it had anything to do with the coat, but you know, the coat obviously again becomes synonymous with bad things to occur for him if they decide to play it out in that fashion.
Well, here you go here, because they kind of help answer the question in the following scene with Frank as he is venting to Stella about he wants to kill somebody for doing this. Stella blatantly says, maybe it's the families have found out that you've been selling our dope out of town.
Yeah.
And Pino goes as far as to blame Frank because, as we find out in this scene, the coat wasn't the only way he was being flashy. He was
Yeah.
being extremely flashy everywhere. And
Yep.
that tended to alert everybody that he has to be getting money from somewhere. And this is Stella telling Frank, maybe it's best if you move out New York and leave. Frank does not want to leave. And then Stella informs him, from this point on, I have to cut you off because I don't know who could possibly be mad for what you've been doing.
Yeah.
I think you may have kind of answered this question already because of who you said did it the first time. Did you believe Stella at all in this conversation?
No.
Look, I was making sure I was not the only one. Nothing she said was believable here. The whole maybe the families found out. Why would they try to kill Frank then?
Yeah, yeah.
Their issue would be with you. It would be with Frank.
Yeah.
Like maybe she is becoming Chenagante's daughter in the flesh and is actually plotting to kill him because you're now a loose end that she doesn't need to stand out there in the public, especially with Frank getting flashy. So that tends to be something interesting. Next up is a weird scene at the club of Bumpy playing chess by himself. And someone come to him saying, I thought business would slow down because of the explosion. And Bumpy says, business is business. Attention is great either way. And this random old man just comes out of nowhere and says, that's because you're the king of Harlem. Only reason I bring this up because you brought up maybe this is a dream for Bumpy. I think at this point episode, that's why I thought, oh, maybe this could just be a figment of Bumpy's imagination. Because this is a very odd scene to have here between him and that man. And we saw it multiple times in this episode of that conversation with this one cleaning guy out of everybody in that club.
Yeah. He wasn't a cleaning guy, he was a saxophonist, but it kept leaving me to wonder, who is this guy? And I still didn't do the research for it, but there's obviously something of more significance here with this. But yeah, whether it's an actor, whether it was somebody who possibly has some significance in Harlem, it could be anything at this rate. Probably need to look that up. But yeah, you know, I think it's, how do I put this? It felt like one of those scenes where Bumpy was just being, I won't say being humble, but maybe it was a measure of like recognition for everything he's done. And maybe Bumpy is taking a moment to like accept that. I don't know. It's just one of those type of things where it's just like Bumpy now has the next thing that he wanted in his, you know, his sort of journey of rebuilding Harlem. And now that he has it, you know, maybe he needed these, you know, almost words of affirmation to like let it sink in, and the realization that he's done it and hearing it from somebody and and seeing it in motion. Maybe that was just one of those type of moments for us as the viewers to kind of like really sit there and understand, like, you know, what has really been accomplished right now. What are we actually experiencing right now in the 3 months time jump? And everybody recognizes that. So it took a stranger per se to be the one to say, you know, here's what it is. And playing chess by itself, I mean, for a moment, I was thinking like, this is what he does. But I was thinking back to Emperors of Ocean Park.
Yeah.
Where those chess moments had so many more meanings and obviously it was a root to his childhood. So obviously not the same character. But I do think that chess is sort of a therapeutic moment of reflection and with strategy and learning new moves and tactics. It almost felt like this was Bumpy having a moment of, you know, having those words of affirmation, but also thinking, well, what do I accomplish next? What is going to be my next move now that I got this one done? So maybe a little bit of imagery with everything.
And I wonder, is it part of the analogy that he gives when the guy asks him who's winning? And Bumpy says, me. He said, well, then who's losing? He said that would also be me. So I wonder, is that the way Bumpy actually looks at life right now?
Yeah.
Like, you're winning because of the club is open and everything you want is here. Then what are you losing at? Or what do you see as a loss? And why do they have to coincide with one another? I thought I read way more into just him saying that than anything else really in the scene, because I think that pinpointed exactly Bumpy's emotions at that moment. But next up, we get the hitman coming to take out Frank. And here's not much to talk about here because Frank did not get the information he needed from the hitman before he killed him. He kills the guy and then gets absolutely no information out of him. But at this point, he just knows somebody is still going to come after me. Following scene, we get Joe and the guy who was with, I can't remember his name to save my life. All I did was love this conversation. As Joe said, Frank has to be the luckiest man in the world. How do you survive a hitman and your car blowing up and you're still here? Like, it's amazing. But as
wait, Joe, can we go back, because Frank putting a knife in dude's neck and then asking him to who sent you? Yeah, of course he was gonna talk. And his landlord, he out. Landlord's had enough of his shit. He out of there. Eviction notice coming.
The moment he gave him that money, he was like, "Yep, we good." I don't think as a landlord you could put a tenant out that you just witness him murder somebody, because you're gonna be thinking in the back of your head, it's a chance he'll do that to me.
True that.
Like, I'm just gonna let him stay here. And still gave him his rent money.
That's hilarious.
But as Joe turns the corner in the scrapyard, we get to see him with the FBI as they have everything shut down. And this is where they throw the warning out to Joe. It's been lots of bodies dropping since you got home. Until we can solve some of these murders, we're going to completely shut down everything that you're doing. What do you think about this introduction? Another introduction for us in the Godfather of Harlem universe to the FBI, and this time them coming after Joe.
Yeah, it's a historical thing that first of all, I totally forgot. I forgot after watching this. I was definitely supposed to do my research and I didn't. But I did. If you do know Joe Colombo's story, then you do know like the FBI was after anybody that was selling narcotics. The families wasn't exempt, and Joe happened to be a main focus for them for a while. So I do love the FBI becomes a new player on the map, and it's historically it is historically needed. But I like to see Joe in shambles. But I wasn't expecting Joe to turn into Joe Black Lives Matter Colombo by the end of this episode. I cannot believe what I watched in this. This literally has to be the funniest episode ever. Oh yeah, but it is an arc I wasn't expecting, and how Joe is responding is definitely not the way I thought he would. What more can you say?
But speaking of that, because we already talked about the following scene, which was Mamie and taking Margaret over to the small art museum in Harlem. So the next scene after that is Joe sitting down with his lawyer. And here's a very interesting part. Joe is going over the newspaper. He absolutely hates the way they are highlighting Bumpy and even the way they photograph Frank versus him, saying they set me up and it makes me look like I'm the criminal, which he is, but he's still mad about that. And then his lawyer tells him about this ADA that is after him. And he tells him it's not much he can do about it, but just maybe he has means to reach this gentleman on his own. Basically, sending Joe after an ADA here. The only part I want to talk about here is I want to say the actions Joe takes after this conversation, because that's the most important part here. Did you think Joe would go as far as he did in this episode, just to send a message to an ADA by technically kidnapping his daughter and giving her back?
No, I mean, right now this is the Joe that you expect. I just wasn't expect for him to turn to a social injustice activist by the end of it. But yes, and it's interesting because it's like one of those things was like, well, that didn't work, so he took the other route here. This is honestly to be like quite frank. This is like the philosophy between Malcolm X and Martin Luther King.
Yeah,
Joe's is playing both sides right
that
now.
is absolutely crazy. That we could play Joe Colombo to them too, because of things that he did in this episode.
Yeah.
Oh man. But next up, we get Frank as he goes to Bumpy and asks for a job. I think this was something we kind of expected off of the last conversation between Dale and Frank, where he was telling Frank, this is where you messed up at with Bumpy.
Mm-hmm.
But here, Bumpy makes it known very clear. You don't want to work for me. You want my protection.
Mm-hmm.
And then Bumpy lets Frank know very gently, but very directly, the answer is no. You can't work for me because I don't trust you. Did you think this would be the turning point between Bumpy and Frank? Just because we know historically where this goes to anyway. But did you think this scene would be it? Or were you more shocked at Bumpy's reaction to it after Bumpy let him live? And even down telling Joe, I think eventually me and him are going to kill you.
Yeah.
But here for him to turn him down and say, I don't trust you, so you can't work for me.
Yeah. It checks out. it does. I mean, this a lot has happened in 3 months, I might say, because this temperament is a lot different, I would say.
Hey, completely different.
But yeah, facts is the facts. It's this young blood, different way how he moves around. He can't have that on there. He was used to hang around with these OGs and going about it. It's a little bit of a liability, I think he still sees in it. But I do want to say that I do think it's interesting that him losing this chick that I don't think we were all thinking will play such a significant part of his change meant so much to him that he's actually crashing out to try to figure out ways to get revenge for or get down to the truth for who did it. So
yeah, that is very interesting because we just thought she was a throwaway prostitute at one point in time.
Yeah.
But clearly
no lie.
Way more. But that first piece of New York, when you get there, you get one of them, you get hooked real quick. And that's what happened there with Frank. Next up, as we get to as I'm calling Beyond the Gates, the Panthers edition, as we get back to Panther HQ, and not much here happens. It's just a very short conversation that I brought up to Sadiq's son and what he means to Sadiq. And here is just Elise telling him, I'm going to help you write your son a letter. I mean, this is just another plot point to get them closer, because that's the key part here. Is the kid, I think, is an analogy for Elise with Margaret. Saying you don't want to be too separated from your kid where you lose your kid.
Yep.
And I think that's what she's trying to help Sadiq here with. And again, not much else to talk about there. Following scene is Mayme going to the bankers. This is possibly one of the most interesting scenes of this episode here, as she goes to them to ask for a loan. And she first brings up, I know you don't loan money to women. Again, reminding us in the time period that we're in, because women had to have husbands sign off on things of this nature. But she said, I'm willing to put up my jury as collateral. And they basically say, we are not a pawn shop.
They're
There
right.
is no way we're going to do that. She then brings up Bumpy, and they let him know Bumpy is his
It's
debt
broke.
load is huge right now. There's
Yeah.
nothing we can do about it. Down to her bringing up, which we have not heard in a while, the money that the bankers received from the government to rejuvenate Harlem. And her saying, me being part of this would help that. And then them getting very direct and letting her know there is no way we're loaning you money. What makes this scene so interesting is Mayme's disposition through this whole conversation, as it helps pinpoint the time period that we're in and exactly what was going on with women. What did you think about just her overall reaction to everything that they were saying?
I mean, it shows you how educated she is about the
Mhm.
resources available, the lack of resources that are available as well too. I also think that regardless of her being a woman, which this is not to discredit the climax of
Yeah.
for women at the time. But let's just be honest, these two dickheads, they haven't been trying to give these folks money for 4 seasons. So I wasn't expecting no different here. Like it's the same thing every
Yeah.
time. They hustle this family every single time. So, you know, and go back because every time Bumpy had to go to them for something, it's
Same
just the
thing.
same way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I expected no different, but I think it was just what was important instead of just being a short no and just being out. It's just making sure we all understand like what's all going on right now in this time period for women. You know, no
Yeah.
matter how famous or how rich or how established or even a line of credit that her husband has, which he doesn't have much of a line of credit because he's not working through credit. But even still, with him having assets that is of
Yeah.
value, they still wasn't mess with it. And as they always say, it be your own people.
Yep.
So here we go.
At this point, I am 100% convinced that these two gentlemen are the people who started and funded Capital One. Because boy, with their interest rates and their refusal to give money to
Duh.
black people, this is definitely Capital One all over again.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think that that just it just shows you again, as you say, over 4 seasons, Bumpy has always had money, and they always turned him down. It wasn't even a thought process to them. So for her to even go to them was a very interesting thing for Mamie to do. Another
yeah.
interesting thing for Mamie to do is she then decides to take her $100,000 plus worth of jewelry to the pawn shop in a local neighborhood. And she tries to sell it. And as the man in the pawn shop tells her, I can't deal with any of this.
Yeah.
It is too much. It's too rich for me. It's way too much money. But he gives her the address of a pawn shop in the white neighborhood that she can go to pawn her jewelry. It's
There's
not
there's
much.
a, there's more
Oh,
here than you think.
yes, it's something that is going to be a lot later on in this episode. Why he sent her to that pawn shop and everything that happens after that. And then next up was Frank and Stella meeting, and this is just them meeting in the alley. And again, Stella giving Frank the same message. I don't know who's going after you. It's one of the families are mad at you. Maybe you just need to look at leaving New York because there's currently 10K on your head. What's interesting here is Stella didn't know who was after Frank, but she knows there's 10K on Frank's head, which means she would have to know who was paying out the 10K.
Hey, can I tell you that? Can we also talk numbers? There's 10K to kill somebody, but there's 100K in order to get
To
into this
join the
damn
art.
book club, art club.
Hey, hey, look here. Killing niggas is a lot cheaper
Clearly,
than selling art.
clearly, this was like the purge. They probably want that 100K to kill 10 niggas.
Hey, oh man, that is crazy. But again, Stella also points out the flashiness that Frank has exhibited over a couple of months. put a bullseye on him and her. But again, we have not seen any instance where Stella is in any form of danger here. It's
Yeah.
all currently on Frank. And I think that is the most interesting part of it all being on Frank. Next up, we get Joe, and this is just him sending the message to the ADA. This is him kidnapping the daughter, then bringing the daughter home and telling the wife, "You should thank Joe Colombo for your daughter getting home safely." Like we didn't know where that was going to end up at,
We were so
just for
worried,
him doing
baby.
that.
But crazy for her to be married to an FBI agent. And this is
And
how
not put two
the
and two together.
turn of events. Yeah.
Not put two and two together at all. Like
Yeah,
maybe
exactly.
someone's trying to send me a message here. Next up is the dinner scene in a way with Mayme, Margaret, and Bumpy. As we see, Mayme is just overly frustrated at this point about not being able to join the board. But as Bumpy comes in, here's Margaret, man, Margaret telling Bumpy everything. Like, no, mommy needs money to join the board. And that's why she's mad right now. And that's why she's drinking. And Bumpy asks her how much it is, and she says it's $100,000. And he says that is more than our mortgage. So that means it will cost her the amazing penthouse they live in is cheaper than joining the art board. Says a lot of exactly what these women are doing here. But the more interesting part is what Bumpy tells her after that is, why are you working so hard to join a group that clearly doesn't want you in it?
Yeah, that's the hard
And we
truth
see
right
that
there.
Mayme could not answer the question.
Yeah.
I don't know anything else because we kind of touched on a lot of stuff with
Kids,
Mayme here.
stay out of adult business. She out there snitching like a man, oh
Hey,
man,
but
oh
look,
man.
if she didn't, I think Bumpy would have never known why his chicken is burned. He'd never known why his wife is drinking. Why Margaret up here, she's snitching because Margaret is tired. Those potatoes look rough. And she like, look, I can keep up with these damn potatoes because you can't get into this art club. But also, this is kind of what Mamie told Margaret to do. When she said,
Yeah,
I need you to never depend on a man. I need it when you want something, you go out and get it. And
true.
this is Margaret, like, you have a husband. Like, in all
True.
honesty, she's coming across like a friend of Mamie's here. Like, you have a husband that
She
you know
still need
has
to,
money.
she still
Why
need to
aren't
be
you asking?
she still need to be sitting at the kids' table, but I digress.
I mean, but technically, Margaret has lived a life. She's already got beaten by white teachers. I mean, technically, Mamie is her grandmother, not her mother. She had, at what point do you constantly put this little girl in adult situations and then still say you need to be a kid? Mm-mm. Y'all took away that luxury, and y'all took out sister mother.
Yeah, these are true. These are true statements.
And speaking of her sister mother, next up we get Elise as she helps Sadiq write a letter. I'm not confused. I'm confused if he can't read or if he can't write. But the way he was talking to her as she was trying to dictate a letter told me it may be a little bit of A and a little bit of B. When he says, because I'm just not good with words. I don't know
Yeah.
what movie that came from when I heard it and I laughed for someone to say that. But here, just setting up the romantic connection between them two here, even though
Yeah.
the letter writing part is literally way more important for what it means for at least later on in the episode.
Yeah.
But here is just a conduit in a way to show the world their relationship and
Yeah.
exactly where this is going down to.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, Frank goes to the pawn shop to pawn his chinchilla coat for $1,000.
Yo,
So
the value of money right now. So now, 10 of those is the cost of his life. And at this rate, 10 of him is the cost of getting into this art club. So all I keep thinking about is the value of everything here.
oh
But
shit!
yeah.
So Mamie only had, what is it, $1,000 if she only had what 100 chinchilla coats, unless my math
Yep.
is super off. Then
Yep.
she could get into the art club here. But again, this gentleman tells him, "This is too high for me." And then he proceeds to tell him who came in his pawn shop to pawn jewelry.
Yeah, now I ain't get that. I definitely did not get that. Like that was the most unnecessary. Like, let me just out here air our business that just doesn't make any sense for him to know.
Oh, no. This one made a little more sense. He knew
Okay.
that Frank was pawning the coat to get out of town
Yeah.
because Frank needs protection.
Mm-hmm.
He then proceeds to tell Frank, "I know who pawned jewelry at a jewelry shop, and they would have that jewelry there." And that was Mayme Johnson. He basically set Frank up to get the jewelry to use as protection.
I
Because
get
there's
it.
no
It's a
one
brilliant plan. That makes sense, but it's just kind of like,
it makes you
why are you
question
volunteering information like that? Also, Mayme came in very discreet because she didn't want anybody to know she was there.
Yes.
And he immediately
100%.
goes and tells some random guy, "Here's what you can do."
Well, and that black woman that was behind Mayme. I don't know what's the significance of her peeping over that shoulder like that.
Yeah, black
Listening to the
people
whole
being
conversation.
nosy. Yeah, that was funny. That was definitely funny. Can't even hold you. Like, what you over there selling? What you got?
But next up, we get Joe Colombo in his this is his civil rights moment. Like, if they would have just played like Sam Cooke's and I Was Born by River Star playing as
Oh
this
my
scene
God.
happened for Joe, it would really show the
I
civil
will
rights
not
war
say
that
nigger
he
no
is.
more. I will not
Exactly.
stand for that. We is all equal. Hey, can I tell you, it is incredibly hilarious to hear him talk about how his people has been victims.
Persecuted.
You know, continue. It was the audacity of him.
The caucasity of him.
Yeah, the
To even think of this
caucasity.
nation. But here, as we start the scene over, this is the police pulling over Frank, and they proceed to do what they do to black people all the time.
Yeah.
Bust a tail light, bust a headlight, till you get
Yeah.
out the car, and
Yeah.
then beat the hell out of you.
Welcome to our world, brother.
Yeah, exactly. As they let him know this is a message from the ADA. Stay away from his family. And Joe decides to be Joe and still talk back to the cops, and they proceed to beat him more and more and more as he talks. Again, not much to talk about in that scene. That's just a scene of Joe getting whooped for Joe being Joe, which makes the most sense in the world. Next up is, I think this is the last scene of importance with the art board with Mayme here. As the art board tells Mayme to join the board, she would have to join it under her maiden name because of the controversy around her husband. But first, it's very important to point out they didn't think she had the money to join because they skipped over for a second and said none of this matters if you just don't have the money. So the moment she opens the case and shows that she has the money, and one of the women says, "Of course it's in cash." And then they bring up she would have to come to this business under her maiden name. And this is where Mayme finally draws the line with this board and with their shenanigans of everything.
Yeah.
Here again, we talked about the roller coaster ride. This is this episode with Mayme, but we didn't talk about necessarily here. This scene is important just because this was the scene that broke the back for her.
Yeah.
Where she realized exactly what Bumpy told her was true. Exactly. Like, they don't want you at all in this club.
At all.
Do you think was it a bigger insult that they didn't believe she had the money or she wouldn't want to get the money, or saying you have to come under your maiden name?
Both. Definitely both. Because you don't want her to have her maiden name because of her connections in the optics with her husband.
Yep.
And of course, if you know the optics of her husband, then you know that there's not a financial issue going on there.
Yeah.
So you didn't think I could get the money?
Exactly. That's why it doesn't make sense.
Like you really can't have it both ways here on the measure of disrespect. But they tried it.
Exactly.
So yeah, definitely it's both. But the last name thing is like, okay, you get the PR aspect of it in any business, how that could be a problem. I do not think this will be the only case in the world where there's been reasons of people trying to I'll say this. I mean, I'll say for a while WWE kind of did that with Stephanie. They really wanted to make sure that the McMahon name was not tied to that company for a while. And even when Rick was having issues, they tried to make sure Charlotte wasn't going around with the Flair name. So like you've seen it happen and you understand why, because it could be bad. But to like flat out say it, it's disrespectful to her.
Yeah.
But what's disrespectful to her as they had glorified her knowledge and her experience with the hood, the ghetto.
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, it's right on par for these folks, man.
Exactly. Hey, white women go white women. That's all you can say. That basically sums up everything that happens in this scene. Next up, we get Joe X as he visits Bumpy. And here he proceeds to tell Bumpy.
X.
He proceeds to tell Bumpy about how he is fed up with these cops. He's fed up with the treatment him and his people are getting. And he can't believe it. And that you blacks always get everything. And it leaves us with nothing. For Bumpy to say, you think we get everything we want? And Joe said, you know what I mean. But this is just a heated back and forth between Bumpy and Joe, because this is the first time we've seen Joe act like he's being persecuted and not just an illegal crime boss who's being looked at by the FBI here. And then we just see this interaction, very tense interaction with him and Bumpy, as Bumpy just throws him the money in the end and tells him, get the hell out of my club here. Did you think that this would lead to the transformation that we get from Joe?
Hell no. Man, they could have, nothing led me to think what was coming.
Oh, man.
Yeah, Joe X, Joseph Luther King, whoever it may be. Hey, you know what's funny? You know what's so funny? I there's people out there that genuinely feel this way too. That you colors get everything.
Yeah, I mean, clearly they think that, because I mean, to them, DEI meant black people. So we clearly know people actually think this.
Yeah,
without
literally just said this yesterday.
Black people
somehow, some way, and I say all the time, thank God that DEI has no way of making those letters an acronym for anything black. Because God knows that would have been on the t-shirt and somebody would have been saying it. Yeah, thank God it wasn't a B in there or an A for African American, or even an N for Negro. Man, it could have got real. It could have got real bad.
They'd have found one way or the other. To pinpoint it to black people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's Joe's issue here. Again, it's just Joe being Joe, and he can't help it.
Yeah.
Next up, we get Frank as he robs the jewelry store. And at first, it was confusing. I didn't know if he was just robbing for Mayme stuff or he was going to rob them in general. But what's very interesting here is he tells the guy, give me everything that was brought in yesterday. And the guy opens up a safe, and it's a lot more stuff in there than was brought in yesterday. But Frank is only interested in that. As he's leaving the jewelry store after the robbery, Frank takes a gut shot. And this leads him to, in the following scene, visiting Bumpy's office for help. I need someone to put two and two together of why Bumpy would have even let him in for help. But as they are surgically removing the bullet from Frank, Frank tells Bumpy, I have all your wife's jewelry in the bag.
Yeah.
And this leads Bumpy to even more so wanting to help Frank out, which again is not really explained at all. But what did you think about, one, not necessarily the robbery, but the aftermath of the robbery, and why Frank would be so comfortable of going to Bumpy's office after getting shot than anywhere else? After
Hail Mary.
The last conversation with Bumpy saying, I don't trust you.
Yeah, it's all his tactics have been Hail Mary. So this it's like you understand the results he wants. He just doesn't actually assess the probability of it actually
Yes.
working. And that's just him. It just shows his I don't want to say maturity, but like, I guess his high measure of optimism to getting the things
Yeah.
he wants here. Yeah, even a robbery was kind of like, did you really think that was going to work?
Exactly.
You have an alarm issue, you know. We need to check it out.
And this Negro enters in
Yeah.
this time period. A Negro
Yeah.
enters, and you're fixing my alarm.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. That
Yeah.
should work perfectly here. Yeah, it is a fly by the seat of my pants is the best way to describe the way Frank
Okay.
has been moving this entire season here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Next up is Mayme as she finally breaks down and tells Bumpy everything. Not knowing Bumpy already knew everything. Very weird here. And she tells Bumpy that, or she starts to tell Bumpy, I sold all my jewelry. And he said, yes. And you, to give them the money, you sold everything that you had.
Yeah.
But then Frank tells her, then Bumpy tells her, I have all your jewelry here. And I actually got it back from Frank. And this is, again, the end of Mamie's arc. But this is her, I think, finally realizing in the end, she went through everything. She gave up everything she could possibly own for a seat at a table that was never going to be offered to her. And
Right.
that's just the final realization in that scene. I don't think there's anything else to talk about that one scene, just because we talked about Mamie a lot in exactly
Yeah.
her arc during this episode.
Yeah.
But we close out the episode with a whirlwind of storylines in one scene that is pinpointed by Elise. As here we get the start of Elise writing a letter to Bumpy about everything in her life, her feelings, how he's hurt her by his actions, and how she does not feel accepted. At the same time, we get a scene between Bumpy and Frank. And this is Bumpy finally allowing Frank into his organization and them now sitting down to play chess as he's going over the rules of chess and comparing it to the streets here to Frank. And finally, we get Joseph Colombo Luther King as he has now started. After getting a bright idea of doing this, he starts, I think it's supposed to be the Italian Defamation League.
Yeah.
Italian American Defamation League, I want to say it is.
Yeah.
That he's starting right here, and he gives a very passionate speech about his people no longer willing to deal with police corruption, police brutality, just because the color of their skin, which is white. And that we're not all mobsters, and we don't all need to be pinpointed that way, even though he is literally a mobster.
Yeah, Italian
Sir,
American Civil Rights League. It says, first of all, the FBI folks actually, this being a concern to them is interesting. I
As they
would have
quickly
felt like
call the
they
AD
would have
and
thought they
tell
were all
him,
above it.
hey, everything on Joe, stop it now. But then the ADA turns around and says, not a problem. We'll just find another way to bring him down.
Yeah.
That was a very interesting conversation there. But again, we also ended it, and the episode closes with after Elise finishes the letter to Bumpy, she tears it up and completely rips it to shreds. What did you think about this closing scene and how they tied all these different storylines into this very passionate moment by Elise?
Yeah, I don't know. Do you think this was like a sense of her saying like it wouldn't matter, would never get to him in the first place? Or did
I
she
think
just kind of wipe her hands clean and say it is what it is?
I think it's a situation where I don't think she believes it will change him.
Yeah.
Not that it won't get to him, but it won't change him. Like Bumpy's going to be Bumpy. But this was also something she had to get out of her chest. You know, that old analogy that sometimes it's better to say things out loud or write them down. It's a way of purging yourself of the feelings. So I don't know if that's what she was doing, of letting all of these go, letting all this hurt and anger get through her words, and then her ripping it up, realizing all I needed was to get it out. I don't necessarily know exactly which way that's going to go with Elise here, but I think this relationship between Sadiq and his son is a trigger to her for her relationship with Bumpy.
Yeah.
And now she's attempting to deal with it. And her writing that letter out was her way of attempting to deal with it. And I don't know if her tearing it up was her letting everything go and realizing, hey, I may be mad for these things that happened in the past, but we're at where we're at
Yeah.
now. And maybe if I respect the relationship where we're at now, it'll be fine. But we can't move forward with all these other feelings I'm harboring staying around. So I think
Yeah.
that could have been it for Elise in that
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, sir, what are your final thoughts on Godfather of Harlem episode 7?
Good. It's a good episode. I just had way too much fun with the Joe Colombo stuff. And the
Same.
time jump was a little uncomfortable, might I say. Because I felt like there
6
might
months
have
could have
been a
been better.
lot that we could have used to picked up on in there, but we're gonna see how it plays out. We're gonna see how it plays out. It's episode 7. We got 3 more to go, and yeah, we're gonna see eventually now that Bumpy and Frank are on the same page. We're gonna see how
Yeah.
this starts to shape up the future for their organization.
Do you think they did the time jump of so little time because they already understand that technically by the year we're in now, Bumpy doesn't have much time left?
No,
If you do it.
that's actually the opposite. You don't want to have accelerate things because we need more time, and you're providing less time with Bumpy. But I think what we should be saying is maybe we just have less time with Forrest Whitaker. And so maybe we are looking to accelerate things
Mm.
because the show decides to either go in a different direction or a spinoff or whatever it may be. But like maybe it's less time with Forrest
I
Whitaker,
mean, but they've been
which
very
means
adamant that they're going to run through Bumpy's life. But I think we're now within, and people correct me if I'm wrong because I'm not doing research. This is off of the top of my head. I want to say we're in the last 24 to 18 months of Bumpy's life
yeah,
before he dies. I think we're right there. So I think they possibly thought if we do a time jump of 6 months or 9 months, that's way too much to plug everything else we want to plug into this storyline here.
right.
Again, also knowing that it's a time jump at the beginning of every season anyway.
Yeah,
So you don't want to
yeah,
jump a year ahead and then didn't have to do that again when that means you're right at the end of Bumpy's life.
yeah,
And plus, I think the St. Clair is going to be a huge plot point for them. And the club needed to be built. And you
yeah,
needed time to build this club. I am just amazed that back in this
yeah,
time period, which I'm gonna have to look it up, if they were able to build
yeah,
something from the ground up, because we saw it literally, they were breaking ground for it, and now all of a sudden it's here 3 months later. So I'm very
it's true.
interested to see just how quickly those things was built back then. So again, it's been another recap review of Godfather of Harlem. Let us know what you think about episode 7. What do you think about Bumpy and Elise's relationship? Do you think the letter was a way for her purging her past issues with her father, or do you think this is going to be something reoccurring for her? What do you think about Joe Colombo and the FBI? Where is this tug of war going to go between them? Do you think that the ADA, as he said in the end, we're just going to find another way to get him? Do you think that could possibly lead to the downfall of Joe Colombo here? And finally, who do you think is trying to kill Frank? Clearly, we think it's Stella, but do you all think that Stella's conniving enough to kill Frank, or are we going to be introduced to someone new on the board who feels that Frank is someone that needs to be taken out? You can tune in for this recap review after the episode airs. Again, comment, like, subscribe. Let us know all your full thoughts. Comment as much as possible on down there so we do know it. This has been another recap review of The Godfather of Harlem. Peace, people.